Gloria Farha Flentje, and as you heard in my introduction, I served on the Judicial Evaluation Commission, which was created in a more reasonable time by the Kansas legislature in 2005. Our job was to evaluate all judges in the state for their performance as judges, and to recommend to the public whether merits judges standing for retention election should be retained. And we did that for 2 cycles of elections. This is all judges in the state who are merit selected, from the magistrate on up to the Supreme Court. In 2012, the legislature, in its own interest, decided to defund the commission. We continued to exist, but we had no money, so we could not do evaluations. And we were sunsetted last year, so the commission is now defunct. Now this year, I am chairing a volunteer group, an ad hoc group of attorneys and lay people who have taken upon ourselves to survey all lawyers in the state of Kansas to get their opinions of the jobs being done by the Supreme Court justices and Court of Appeals judges who are standing for retention. And we will be posting on a website October 1st the results of that, because we want voters to be informed about how judges are doing in their jobs. That is another important part of having a free and appropriate judiciary. We want them to be accountable as well, and having an evaluation process so that the public can decide whether they want to vote to retain a judge or not is very important. So Anne has said, and I would second, that the court's job is to be free and fair, as in the video, and basically non-political. So why are we here today? Because Governor Brownback and the legislature have decided that this is a political issue, that they want to have control, and that they have worked to try to do that. I think I have a few PowerPoints. Okay. So the essential role of the courts is to uphold the Constitution. In Kansas, that means the federal and state constitution. That is their basic job. They also interpret laws, but ultimately it is to assure that the Constitution is upheld and followed. Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist Papers, limitations, meaning on the legislative and executive authority, can be preserved in practice no other way than through the medium of courts of justice, whose duty it must be to declare all acts contrary to the manifest tenor of the Constitution void. So anything, that is their job. Without this, he said, all the reservations of particular rights or privileges would amount to nothing. He went on to say, no man can be sure that he may not be tomorrow the victim of a spirit of injustice by which he may be a gainer today. And I think it's our job to see that the governor and his supporters are going to be on the other side of the coin after the election. So the role of the courts in America I've outlined some points up there and I won't go through them. It's just really important to understand that we can't take the rule of law for granted. The selection processes that Anne has detailed to you assure that we get qualified candidates for our judicial positions. And on our district courts of the state, our lower courts, half of the judicial districts use a similar process to what Anne has described. The other half, it's actually 52 and 53, elect judges in a partisan election process. And each judicial district makes the decision by district which one of those two processes will be used. Okay, next slide. Well, I don't think I need to even go through that because Ann already did. So we'll just move on, okay? The attack on the courts. Across the whole country, this just isn't happening in Kansas. Special interest groups and politicians are attempting to control the courts by determining how the judges are selected and who is elected. As you saw in the video, our courts must be fair and free. Currently, the courts in Kansas are under attack because the current governor and the majority in the legislature are not happy with decisions of the court. Doesn't support their agenda. And more specifically, they're really concerned about the whole list of school finance cases. The governor has made inroads in controlling the courts because his first move was to change the selection process for the Kansas Court of Appeals. But what else are they going to try to do? There have been a number of things that have happened, next slide, in trying to control the courts. First of all, we talked about judicial selection. Secondly, the judicial budget. They have cut and cut the court's budgets. And I don't know if you know, but in many years, the courts have had to take time off and tell all employees of the court, because 90+% of the court's budgets are people. They don't really have too many expenses besides people. And they'll take days off, and they will, everybody will go home, nobody gets paid, and the court is closed. And that's not what we want in our state. We want our courts to be open and available for the people. Additionally, the legislature and the governor have tried to control the courts by reducing the retirement ages of judges. If they reduce retirement ages, then the senior judges will have to retire, and they will have opportunities to put more people on the court. That hasn't occurred, but they've made the attempt. So what can we do? Well, we have to change who's making these decisions. Remember that this governor and the people who support him and the people who provide him the funding to do this are working to make the courts more partisan rather than free and fair. So let's remember in November.